Hello, my name is Al Clement, and this video presentation will be on the cognitive bias called the negativity bias. So before I jump right into the presentation, one of my hobbies is playing Dungeons & Dragons. It's a very fun game where you roll dice, explore dungeons, and fight dragons. You don't need too much more than a few friends, a book, pen and paper, and most importantly, dice. Now, the best you can roll on a dice is a 20, the worst you can roll is a 1. So for the game I played in last night, I got a brand new set of dice right out of the package, opened them up, first time using them. We were about to have our final fight against Thordak, the Cinder King. And in this fight, with me and my 3 friends facing off against our Dungeon Master. It was a long fight, and when all my teammates just kept falling one by one to its horrifying fire breath. And then it was just me and Thordak. And when I rolled to deal its finishing blow, as it was looking hurt, I rolled a 3 and had failed, ending the campaign and all of our deaths as our DM proceeded to go ahead and roll 20 and kill us. When I got home, I threw the dice away and Google searched my DM's dice because my dice always rolled terrible and his dice always rolled perfectly. So what does this have to do with anything? Well, the negativity bias is a bias where we remember negative events stronger than we remember positive events. The negativity bias is why it takes longer to get over bad first impressions and why traumatic events linger longer than it takes a positive event to fade away. Let's look at the D&D game I had last night. Now it felt like I couldn't roll above a 3 or a 5, but there were times when I rolled a 18 or a 16 when it mattered as well. But it felt like I couldn't roll above a 3 or a 5, remembering it, because those lower rolls hurt so much. The result of a dice is a random. Dice itself can't be good or bad. It is a random result. If we were to look at the whole night, the results would be spread out over a bell curve more so than just all terrible rolls. And just as my rolls weren't always terrible, my DM's rolls weren't always bad for me. He would roll low and that would be a positive experience for me. But when he rolled high, it hurt me so much more that it skewed my perception of how the dice were being rolled all night. I remembered my dice rolls hurting me more vividly, so it felt like my dice were terrible and my DM's dice were amazing. This is the negativity bias in action. Now that we know what the negativity bias is and we've seen it in practice, we can go over some techniques to combat it. The first technique is making a pro and con list. This forces us to re-examine our memory and pull out more positive events than we would tend to remember by having to have a quantitative number of both positive and negative. We can also look at the actual probability of certain events and see if the negative event is actually more likely to happen consistently or if it only appears to happen more oftenly because our memory remembers the negative more clearly. So, we can try to use these techniques on the D&D game I played last night. The pro and con list is a little difficult to do with something like determining whether the result of a dice is good or bad, but looking at the probability of an event is perfectly good strategy for determining the dice. To test this, we could roll the dice a number of times and see if it rolls below a 10 more often than it rolls above a 10. If the dice is balanced, the result should be about 50-50, and if this is the result, we know the negativity bias was affecting us before. However, if we get skewed a lot below, we know that the negativity bias probably wasn't affecting us as there is an actual difference in the outcome of the events. Let's do another example of the negativity bias. Another example would be if you're taking an exam. On the exam, there's 10 questions. 3 of the questions are very difficult, while the other 7 are regular difficulty. You are more likely to remember that exam being very difficult due to the 3 very hard questions. This is because you tend to remember in a ratio of 3 to 1. For every 3 positive things, you're remembering 1 negative thing. This tends to skew your mind so you remember more negatives than positives. This leads you to look at the test like this and think, wow, that was very hard despite there only being 3 hard questions. A simple pro-con chart, 3 hard questions in the con column, 7 positive questions in the pro column would help you alleviate this effect. So to conclude, the negativity bias causes us to remember negative events more potently than we remember positive events. So we need to be cognizant when using our memory that it may not have been as bad as it seemed. Thank you very much.